Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome Nicole Oke here, as she is a children's book author. We're going to get to know her and have a great conversation. So, Nicole, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much, Kyle, for having me here. I'm so excited. Like you mentioned, I'm a children's book author, and that's actually more of my side gig than my main gig. So I work in Boise, Idaho at the National Interagency Fire Center, where I'm a training specialist to help out in wildland fire. So here I have, it's crazy. And I don't know, I'm sure many folks have seen the smoke outside. So it's a busy time of year. But I've got two beautiful little girls at home, 3 and 8. That's just a little bit about me.
How in the world are you able to write and do all this with children? I mean, I know you've got probably activities outside of the house for the kids. I don't know if they're into sports or dancing or whatever, but how do you manage that being a mom?
It is incredibly hard. And everything has to give just a little bit. And normally it's the writing and my personal time and stuff like that. The girls are 3.5 and 8, and my oldest is her first name is Isabel, but we call her Izzy. And ever since she was about 1 year old, we have nicknamed her Busy Izzy because she is just non-stop. And so we spend a lot of time doing activities. She's in Girl Scouts. She's very active in that. And so it's an interesting journey. The 3-year-old isn't in quite as many activities, but she's still at that age where she just wants mom and she wants to be, doing things. And being a training specialist in wildland fire has really helped because I'm not out in the field. I'm not in it every day, but I can still support the fire community. So that's really helped. And then the children's book writing, while I love it and it's my passion, and I think it's so important to get these messages out, it kind of is a little bit slower because, the kids have to come first. And they actually are the inspiration behind pretty much all of the stories. And so every now and again, I'll get a really good conversation with my girls and I'm like, that has to be a book. And so then I'll go upstairs and write it down real quick before I forget. But yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. That's for sure.
Now, are you self-published?
Yes, so I am self-published. When I wrote my first book, Panda and the Gift of Possibility, I really went through and kind of thought about the pros and cons of doing the self-published route versus the traditional. And the amount of time that it takes to go the traditional route between finding an agent, finding someone who wants to publish you, working with them, kind of turning over some of your creative control to them, and then going on their timeline, and then after all of that they may even decide not to publish the book. I was like, I don't want to wait that long. I wanted to get my message out, and so I decided to do the self-publishing route. And it's definitely been challenging. I've learned so much since I published my first book, and I think with the second one coming out, I'm going to learn even more. And it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I will say that.
Well, I've talked to a lot of authors that have taken that route. Do you recommend that for most authors to do?
I do recommend it. And the reason I would say that is because the more I hear about traditional publishing, the more I'm hearing from authors that they still have to do the bulk of the marketing. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the biggest chunk of work that comes with the book. And so when you go with a traditional publisher, not only do you have to wait and get signed and, they're very picky about what they pick up, but then you still are doing the bulk of that marketing and getting way less of the, percentage of the income back. And so I do think self-publishing is a good route to go. Now, my recommendation though is to build a good team. So if you're going to self-publish, don't just, don't be your own author, illustrator, editor, formatter, all of those things. Like, find the right people to be on that team. So I write the book, but I have a professional editor who is children's books only, so she really helps make sure that it's the right thing for that genre. I've got a professional illustrator his name's Richard Hoyt, and he is beyond fabulous to work with. I've also got a professional formatter and book designer, and so I know that what I'm doing is the same level and the same quality that someone would get from a traditional publisher. So if you want to go self-publishing, it's definitely doable. Like, build that team.
One of the main characters is Penny the panda. Is there a reason behind picking a panda?
The reason that I picked a panda, and this may sound kind of funny, is when I was coming up with the first book, I knew I wanted this stuffed animal that was going to come to life. And I one day was just kind of relaxing. I wasn't even really thinking about my book. And I knew I wanted my book to be about possibilities and helping kids to see different possibilities. And I was like, well, I love it when things kind of go together, like peas. And I was like, so if it's possibility, maybe I could have it be a name with a P. And I thought one day just randomly, a penny for your thoughts. And I was like, okay, Penny. I want it to be Penny and the Book of Possibilities. And then I was like, so what animals start with P? And I thought through a couple of them. And, at first, the first one that came to mind was poodle. But I had a hard time imagining like this stuffed poodle coming to life and helping Izzy through her emotions. And then Panda came up next. And I was like, oh, talk about an animal that just feels nice and warm and loving. Now, in real life, obviously, I wouldn't recommend any of us hug a panda, but a stuffed panda, I mean, that just felt like such a good emotional friend, to have. So that's how Penny came to be.
So what emotions have you focused on since you started this?
The first book, Penny Panda and the Gift of Possibilities, focused on, I'll give you a little background of the story. Izzy wakes up and gets Penny for Christmas from Santa, and she has a baby sister named Maddie. And she starts to notice that her sister got more presents. And she does what we all do as human beings and kind of jumps to an assumption and decides that must mean her parents love Maddie more. So that's kind of the first big topic that we took on in that book. And in that book, Penny comes to life and helps her to play the possibility game to see all the other possible reasons why that may have happened, including some really logical ones, like the parents spent the same amount of money, but baby toys are cheaper, so Maddie got a few more, to a really fun one where they talk about when Santa dropped Penny off. The elf that came with him loved one of Izzy's presents so much that he stole it and put it in his pocket. And that was why there was a different amount of presents. So that's kind of the emotions that we focus on in the first book. The second book that's coming out, it'll be published in September. It's actually on Kickstarter now. And it's called Penny Panda and the Emotion Ninjas. And that book, Izzy is in a school talent show. And so she's super excited. And then she kind of looks out at the audience and gets really nervous. So it's all about how it's okay to have multiple emotions at one time and how sometimes they may conflict, but they talk about how every emotion is there to help us and protect us. And with that, Penny comes to life and helps Izzy talk through it. And then Izzy's like ninjas. And so they get all excited and they talk about how, yes, they're ninjas, but you're the boss and you control your ninjas. So it really touches on a bunch of different emotions.
When you're writing this series, are you wanting to keep it lighthearted the whole time? Or are you looking to maybe get into something that's a little more, I don't know, in depth, or I don't know, even maybe controversial?
Both. I have two more books that I'm working on. One is called Penny Panda and the Fairness Fairy. With my 8-year-old, one of the things I hear all the time is that's not fair. And in her mind, I think a lot of kids, they think fair means equal, which isn't always true. So that one takes place at a carnival and playing games, and it's very fun and lighthearted to help kids think about fairness in a different way, but in a fun way. The other one I have that I'm working on is called Penny Panda and the Day Daddy Didn't Come Home. And it's a book I'm writing specifically for the firefighting community.
Mm.
And it's a book to help parents potentially prepare for, what could be the worst day of their lives and their children's life if their spouse or brother or, family member that is a firefighter dies in the line of duty. And the book it's going to be a very sensitive topic, but I think it's a very needed one. And I'm going to go through a couple extra steps with that one and have some counselors review it for me to make sure that everything in it is, correct, that it's not just my opinion of what should happen or how things should be worded. So that one I think it will be a little bit, I don't want to say darker, but it will be a little more serious tone than the first one or the other one.
I'm assuming you've talked to your children about that.
We have, and thankfully I don't go out in the field anymore, and so it's not as big of a concern. But the subject of death has come up. My father has passed away. He died of cancer, and so we've talked about that. We've had family pets that have passed away, and my hope is with this book, even though it's focused on a wildland firefighter, is that any parent looking for a resource to talk about death with their child could get this book. And I think one of the benefits of it is it talks about in the beginning how, the firefighters, they train for this all the time. They wear the right protective gear. They have rules that they follow. Like this, it has nothing to do with them. It's just an accident that happens. And then it dives into all of the different emotions that a child could feel when they lose someone. And it really focuses on normalizing that, on encouraging them to talk about it, and just kind of letting them know that it's going to take a long time for that grief to go away, but that it will get better. So I'm like I said, I'm hoping it'll be a resource for anyone that has experienced death and wants to have a story that can help them talk about it with their kids.
When people find out this is what you do you get bombarded with suggestions on what your next book should be?
I do. And it's really interesting because all of my books really focus on that social emotional learning element, like building that emotional intelligence for kids and for parents. And so when folks come to me and they have a suggestion in that arena, then I'll take it into consideration. But I get a lot of people that are like, I have this dog and you should write this story about my dog. And I just want to be like, thank you, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure your dog is great. Like, I love dogs, don't get me wrong. But that doesn't really fit into my mission. A lot of times I'll get stories, suggestions that don't fit into my mission. And my passion really is to just bring those tools and those skills and that emotional intelligence to kids. And so I'll just kindly and politely say thank you. I think it's a great idea for a book. And if you want to write it, I'd be happy to tell you a little bit about my process. But I usually just stick with the social emotional topics.
I got you. Would you do one like, stranger danger kind of thing?
Yeah, I've thought about books like that and hitting some of the tougher topics. And I think what I want to do is kind of weave them in so that it's like there's some fun, lighthearted ones, and then there's some of the more serious topics that go along with it. And it also kind of depends on where the inspiration comes from, because I want it to be an engaging story too. I don't want it to just be, just like a preachy story. And so if I get a good idea, then that kind of helps dictate which emotional element I'll go after next.
Now, is your characters going to grow older as the stories go along, as like your children do?
I haven't decided yet. When I very first started reading, my biggest inspiration was the Bernstein Bear books, and they never grew up. So that was kind of my first thought. But I've also had a couple of conversations with folks about how Izzy could potentially continue to grow up, and I could maybe even try to write some like early chapter books that could delve a little bit deeper into some of these topics. I'm a little hesitant because writing children's books is hard enough. I don't know about going into the chapter books. But if that happens, then I think I might have a book where Izzy kind of turns Penny over to her younger sister, Maddie. And then Maddie could have a whole new set of adventures with Penny.
That's an interesting angle to look at. You know, there's going to be different topics that are going to come up as the kids get older. And if you can integrate them both with the younger sister and the older sister, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think it would be great. And I think there's so many sibling dynamics that I could approach too with the both of them, which kind of I did a little bit in the first book, but Maddie was just kind of a sideline in that story where she could come in and be a little more involved in the future.
Are you wanting to do other kind of writing?
I've done a little bit in the past, more kind of, I'm not exactly sure what you would call it. Maybe inspirational writing. I've done some blog posts for the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center and some blog posts on my own site, but I've toyed with the idea of doing a novel. I think the word count overwhelms me a little bit, and I'm like, maybe after I have a few more books out and I feel a little more confident in the writing skill set. But it's such a fun thing, and it's funny because people will be like, "But you're a published author." And I'm like, that doesn't mean that I'm all of a sudden super confident and ready to like take on all of the different genres, but I would like to someday.
I know these topics can go for boys or girls, but would you want to do maybe something that geared a little more to the little boys?
It wasn't something that I'd thought about when I wrote my first book, but it's definitely something I've taken into consideration with future books. Like this second book, Penny Panda and the Emotion Ninjas, even though it's still kind of primarily about Izzy and Penny, I was hoping that bringing those ninjas in and talking about emotions as ninjas might be something that the boys would be drawn to. And so I tried to kind of bring it in that way. I haven't figured out, if I should maybe find another character to add in that's a friend or a cousin potentially that could also kind of go along on these journeys. But it's definitely something that's been on my mind because I think the skills that kids can learn from these books are definitely not just for girls. These are for everybody. And I don't want boys to feel excluded from learning those skills.
Well, my youngest grandson, if you want to get him interested, it's got to have either monster trucks or dinosaurs in.
Right? Yep. I have had a thought about trying to do one like in space because I thought maybe that would be kind of fun. The dinosaurs is a great idea. Yeah, the ninjas was the first thing I was like, oh, I think boys like ninjas. That might grab some of their attention.
How long did you say you've been working for the fire agency?
I've been working in wildland fire since 2003. So 21 years I've been working there.
What got you interested in doing that?
How I got involved in wildland fire is kind of a funny story. When I was graduating from high school, my dad worked for the Bureau of Land Management, which is one of the big firefighting agencies. And I just remember I was not a rebellious kid at all. But for whatever reason, I had it in my head. I am never working for the federal government. I will never work for the BLM. Like, I don't want to do that. My dad did that. I'm not going to do it. And then I went to college. My first year of college, I came back. I needed a summer job. And my dad was like, well, why don't you go into dispatch and help them with all the wildland fires? And then you'll just make some money, for the summer, go back to school. You don't ever have to do it again. So I did it for one summer. I fell in love, and lo and behold, I've been working for the BLM or the Forest Service back and forth for the last 21 years when I swore up and down I never would.
You did it anyway. Hey, that's great,
I
though.
know.
You're doing something great for Idaho.
Yes, yeah, and it's so nice to be able to give back and to do something that matters. And that's probably the biggest connection actually between my day job and my children's books is I want to give back. I want to make the world a better place. And so hopefully both jobs are doing that.
And you're a leader in the Girl Scouts?
I was last year. I was a leader for 2 years in the Girl Scouts. This last year, my co-leader left. So we had to disband our troop, and we're now into a new troop that already has 2 leaders. But I anticipate, knowing myself and my daughter, that it won't be long until I have another leadership role in the organization because I love it. And it's another program and another mission that I'm just so passionate about. So, bringing up these girls, teaching them about life, giving them skills to be successful. It's just awesome.
For those out there that are wanting to get into writing, do you have any advice that you'd like to give?
My biggest piece of advice would be just do it. Just write. Like, don't start by thinking about all of the other stuff and don't get focused. And I was guilty of this too, but don't get focused on editing while you're writing. Just let it flow, let the story get out. And then another piece of advice that I was given that worked really well was put it away. Finish it and put it away and don't think about it for a couple weeks and then bring it back out. And then after that, once you have a story that you feel good about, that's when I'd say start building your team and finding those good people. And it's going to be a little expensive, but it's worth it to get the right folks. It's worth it to have the team of professionals to help you there. So that would be those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice. Just don't get it out of your head. Don't let your head get in the way. And then make sure you have a good team of folks.
When I took writing, one of the things the teacher emphasized was brainstorming and just jot down as many ideas as you can think of and then worry about putting it together later. But nobody ever talks about that part.
They don't. And one of the things, I've joined a couple writing groups, which I would also recommend to anyone who wants to start writing. I go to one that's here locally in Boise, and then I have one online that I attend. And one of the terms that was brought up that I had never heard before was they asked people, like, do you sit down and do your story outline, or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Like, they're like, there's 2 types of writers. And I am definitely a fly by the seat of your pants kind of writer. I just sit down and start writing. But I do know a lot of folks that they brainstorm and they organize and they outline before they start writing. And I've seen a lot of people be really successful that way too.
Well, if someone wants to buy your books, where do they go?
Yeah, of course. They should be available anywhere books are sold. The number 1 spot right now is Amazon. It's the easiest place to get it. And Penny Panda and the Gift of Possibility is out now and available for purchase. Penny Panda and the Emotion Ninjas is currently available for pre-order on Kickstarter and then will come out on September 24th. And then it should be available anywhere books are sold. Again, for sure on Amazon.
Do you have a website?
I do. It is Nicole Oke, and that is spelled NicoleOke, author.com.
I'm assuming people could probably ask for advice if they get on your website.
Yeah, for sure. There is a contact me page on my website. And then my email is, I believe it's also on there, but it's really simple. It's Nicole.Oke@okepublications.com. And so feel free to ask questions. I have some resources I may send you, and I'm happy to help because I think the more stories we can get out there, the better.
Definitely. And the necessary evil in this world, what is your social media?
Yes, the very necessary evil. My social media, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and both of those are Nicole Oke author, so you can find me there. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, and that one it's a little bit easier if you just search for Nicole Oke. Thankfully, it's a last name that's not super popular, so I'm pretty easy to find.
I'll make it easy for everyone. I'll put all the links in the description.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Nicole, thank you so much for coming on and spending your time with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a ton of fun.
Well, let me know when the next book comes out. I'd love to have you come on and talk about it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network